Well, hello everybody, and welcome to your Monday night. I know John's like, it's a Monday. We're having fun.
We're back.
It is. It is. This is awesome. This is awesome because this is like my highlight of the week. It is.
Okay, so
just don't tell my family.
It just depends. If it's the highlight from the beginning of the week to this point, okay, I can have this. If this is the highlight for the whole week, we might need to start our counseling program pretty quickly here.
I'm pleading the fifth.
Okay, everyone can read into it as a. Let's see, we got Freddie coming in, Howie, Scott. Thank you guys for joining us this evening.
Yeah,
excellent.
So tonig's gonna be kind of a fun little bit of a program, if you call it that, because we are going to be talking cocktail music, and you know, as we're getting back into the weddings or preparing, whichever happens to be the case for where you're at. I have a strong belief that cocktail hours sometimes are not, let me rephrase that. They don't get the love that they should.
Mm-hmm. I'm
a firm believer. I used to, when I first did cocktail music, John, I don't know if you were the same way, but for the longest time, I had a couple CDs. They were the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. And then there was a big band CD that I had of like covers. And I would just drop it in the tray. I'd hit play and I'd walk away. And that's what I did for probably the longest time. And then I'm not sure where I got the idea, but I'm sure it was somebody. I didn't come up with it on my own. That cocktails, if you play the right thing for cocktails, you are setting the mood up so that when it comes time for open dancing, you've already primed the pump and they're ready to go.
Exactly.
And so I felt it was important that we kind of tackle that tonight. Talk about a couple different styles, a couple different locations maybe where those styles tend to jump out a little bit more. For example, if your couple is just like, I don't care, you know, we really don't have a choice or a preference, then, you know, maybe we can kind of fit the decor, help the decor help adjust to what we're doing. With that, and then I thought it would be a good idea for us just to brainstorm some songs. And now, due to restrictions and not getting our stream shut down, we won't be playing the songs. But if you write them down, it's easy to Spotify them or YouTube them yourself, and not during the show, but you can check them out and then see if they fit with what you like, or see maybe you already have them.
So I kind of misunderstood our topic tonight because you were talking cocktail music, and I thought the idea of tonight's show was to find how many different covers of Huey Lewis's "I Want a New Drug" that fit all those categories you gave me.
I looked on Spotify. Nobody does a cover of that song because nobody likes it.
No,
except for one guy in Minnesota that
there's
really
lots of them. There's lots of them. As a matter of fact, one of my favorites happens to be a country version of "I Want a New Drug" from the band "Sleep at the Wheel." What would that be?
Touche.
So, but wait, there's more. See?
Wow. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if Hasty Dixie did one.
They could.
Have you ever heard of them?
Oh, yes, I actually had. But wait.
For those of you that don't know, they started as an AC/DC country cover band.
I think so. Yeah, I think it was AC/DC.
I mean, it's real bad. Like if you read the story of how they got started, it's quite humorous.
Well, David pretty much ended our show for us. Cocktail hour is a good time to burn those non-danceable must-plays. Yep, pretty much. Okay. So our next topic.
I disagree with David. Tonight, and some of the things that I'm going to throw out and some of the ideas I'm going to throw out, I'm going to, like, especially when we get to my Motown set, some of my Motown stuff, I'm going to take it one step further. I'm going to say you can throw some of those danceable tracks on. Because here's the thing. Think about how many songs you play in a given night.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, estimate whatever that might be. 60. If you're up in Canada, it's 400. But, we
brought it up to the nearest 100.
For as long as they play. And the exchange rate, it changes how many times you can play them. But seriously, think about how many songs you play in a given night. And I think you can burn through some of your tracks, some of your danceable. Now, I'm not talking like your hardcore dancing, and I'm not talking about the ones that are going to be like your bangers and that kind of idea. But I think if you get some dancing ones in there, it's not a bad thing. It's not. If you get a couple of people dancing during cocktail hour, oh my gosh. Like, later on it's going to be excellent for you. Like, you don't even have to think. It's like, oh, they got up and danced to that. Tonight's going to be a good night. And you're going to be set. So, yeah, I understand what David's getting at, but I think you can flirt with that line a lot more than you may have thought you could.
So our first cocktail folder should be talking about disco music, because you never know when you might need to have a disco version of
Jeez.
I Want a New Drug disco version. Yeah, no, yeah.
That sounds like the regular.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not. It actually, if I wouldn't have cut the intro, or if I wouldn't have jumped in, there's actually a much more of a
disco-y feel.
So where are we going to go first, Dan? I'm ready.
So let's talk about MJ's favorite first.
Oh, country.
Right. Yeah, we're going to go country first.
I happen to have had that queued up, and if you guys need me to play it again, I'm sure I can find it. Again,
no, because if we play too much, they're gonna like say they're gonna block it. Remember, we can't play our songs.
And Asleep at the Wheel song from like the 80s, I don't think anyone's gonna be paying attention to that. And if you're an Asleep at the Wheel fan, I'm sorry. The views represented by me doesn't represent Dan and his respectful working nature. So. Okay, so country. I wanted to do something a little bit different with the country, and now getting into more of a serious nature. I wanted to go a little bit older because I wasn't sure how far back you would go with some country songs. So I went back kind of pre-1990.
Ooh, okay.
With a few. So tell me what you did with it.
I definitely went more contemporary, more modern.
Excellent.
So this is gonna be good. So get out your pens and paper, or just keep scrolling back on the thing until you like have it memorized. You good?
Good. I'm good.
Good.
I'm good.
All right. So first off, let's talk scenario. All right. So Bride and Groom doesn't really give you a lot of leeway here. I think a lot of people would be like, oh, barn wedding, done. I'm just gonna play country, and I think you're setting yourself up for potential big time problems with that. I really feel that, your barn wedding, I get the cliche that goes with that, but I think you also have to kind of look at the barn that we're talking about. So barn weddings, because they've jumped in popularity over the past couple of years, there's really two types. You've got the one that has basically looks like a barn on the outside, but you walk inside and everything's been redone. The floors are redone. It's polished. If it was a barn, it was like 100 years ago, because it doesn't look like it anymore. That's your upscale barn. Then we've got the one that you can see through all the slats in the board. It's 8,000 degrees. The birds were in there 20 minutes before the wedding was. The floors give way every time you step on them. Okay, two ends of the spectrum, and now I realize there's a bunch in the middle, but you get my picture that I'm talking about. I feel that it would be safe to say, unless your client has said no country, I think it would be safe to say that when you have the barn with the slats and the scariness that you might have, that's a country wedding.
Kind of, sort of.
Yeah, I think it definitely leads. Now, not maybe a full country night, but definitely opens yourself to this cocktail hour more than any of the others.
Very possible.
Okay. And then, we're not going to talk country western. Well, some of John's might, but
mine will probably be playing from both sides of the genre, the country and the western side.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm covering.
So go ahead, John. What have you got here? Well, I'm curious.
I'm starting hitting a true early, and I shouldn't say super early, but kind of one that we view as an original. Willie Nelson with "Always on My Mind." Is one of those songs that people know it, and they, some people will sing along to it, but it's just a kind of a staple from that era, and that for the older country crowd, which right now unfortunately puts them at about 70 years old, give or take.
But you will earn kudos and brownie points by making grandma sit over in the corner smiling
Yep.
because you played something that she never thought this guy would have ever played.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You want to keep going with your list, and then we'll come back to mine?
I can certainly do that. So
okay.
I'm just trying to, get all these Huey Lewis songs that I put, all these, I want to do drug versions out of the way. And there's just a couple of them. So second one, one that sometimes drifts into the dance, but it's one that, unless it's been requested or unless I get into a crowd that really likes that type of music, Mel McDaniel's Louisiana Saturday Night. It's one that isn't quite upbeat enough to do in a dance, but yet if you have a crowd that's a country crowd like that barn that Dan was describing, it could be utilized later. Otherwise, it's a great kind of sing-along song for that kind of a cocktail time in that type of environment, because it's the old, the stomp clap type of a song where you're singing along to it and, yee-haw type of thing. Continuing on, one of my favorites in that kind of an era is in that 80s era was Eddie Rabbitt came out with I Love a Rainy Night, which is kind of bridging you into some 80s pop music, but it's also kind of a crossover between the two, where it can be appealing to those of us who grew up in 80s pop because he came across with that song, and then those who are like Eddie Rabbitt as a country artist. It's the two. A next one with an audience that is a more hardcore country. George Strait, there's a lot of different things that came out during the 80s from George Strait, and one that I like to use is the song The Chair. It's a slow song. It's not really a ballad per se. It tempo-wise is a ballad, and some people do request it as a slow song, but it's a true country song from the standpoint that it's telling a story, and it's kind of a humorous little story of this encounter of this gentleman and this gal, and it's a neat song that can be played, and for people who know it, they'll sing along to the song. So George Strait, The Chair. A true sing-along song that could be during the dance, but generally if you want to have this kind of fun building up that country crowd to hit the dance floor, Oak Ridge Boys' Elvira is one that definitely is the sing-along song that people don't know the verse anymore. It used to be that everybody knew the verses, but not so much. But they know they can sing along Elvira. They can do that. So a kind of a ballad that's a forgotten one during this era, the kind of later 80s. Restless Heart came out with a ballad, I'll Still Be Loving You. It was used at weddings in that particular period of time as a first dance for a lot of weddings. It's kind of like the From This Moment On from the 90s. It's that type of a song from that era. So that one is one that's kind of nice to have in that back, and you can throw that in. You'll have people say, oh, that was our song. We love that song. I'll Still Be Loving You from Restless Heart. A song that isn't quite the most wedding appropriate, but it's a song that people remember if they were into country music during that particular that era of the 80s and such, is a band by the name of Exile. And the song is Kiss You All Over. Not the most wedding appropriate songs, but the appeal of this song and people who know this from that era, because there were some songs in the country world at that time where they were singing about obviously alcohol, but there was some of it where they were spending the night together and doing different things. So there was a lot of adult themes going on in country music at that particular time. The Exile tune it was strong then, and it has this kind of it's one of those, oh, I remember that song, yeah. And it has kind of a little kind of a driving beat to it with the song. It's not a dance floor beat, but it's something that people who from that era would be like, yeah, I remember that song. The final one on my little short list here is Glenn Campbell with he had many hits in the 70s and 80s, actually going earlier than that. But the one that would be the one you'd almost have to put in your dinner set would be Southern Nights. Not only was it was hot then, I remember hearing that on the AM radio like all the time when we were out in the barn back in that time. But of course, with the Guardians of the Galaxy, brought it back, and now you've got multiple generations that know this particular track. It would definitely be one that I would have in that cocktail set. So there's my few country picks for tonight. Nice.
So as I kind of alluded, I went more modern with this. There's a couple different, and I'm going to pick up going to pick up some artists. I'm going to pick out some songs that are going to go with this. But I would also say that, especially with some of these modern ones, you definitely could dig into some of these other. You could definitely dig into some other tracks by these artists, just because you'll find that sometimes you hit one, you're like, oh, I really could have gone over here with this one, or those kind of things. So one for me is Zac Brown Band, "Loving You Easy." Just kind of has that good feel to it, a good vibe for it. Fits obviously very nice with the theme of a wedding.
Sure.
Darius Rucker, "Homegrown Honey." Going back just a couple years, and most of these in my country set are not like brand new. You don't want stuff. I feel like you don't want a lot of stuff that's brand new being thrown in a cocktail.
Yep, I agree.
You want to be having that conversation. You want to be kind of in the background, and you want them to go, "Hey, hold on a second. I'm curious if I'm hearing what I think I'm hearing." And oh yeah, okay, I'm digging this, or whatever. And I'll take a quote from Nick Spinelli one time. I think it was in one of his videos that he basically said, when I'm doing cocktail, I want them to have one more drink than they were planning on having before. So I want them to be having that good time and just kind of go for that extra drink. Sam Hunt, "Body Like a Back Road." This one kind of got a lot of play for a while there, but now that it's kind of fallen a little bit behind, it's a good one that you can throw in from time to time. Blake Shelton, "Honeybee." Again, another fun, upbeat type of one. And then Florida Georgia Line, "Cruise." And I would probably stick more to just the straight Florida Georgia Line than to throw the one with Nelly. Yeah, with Nelly in there, and just go for the straight one. It just wanted to kind of give you pure, and there's a little bit less. I say, when we talk about danceability, I feel like that one takes it up here, where this one keeps it just under that line.
Sure. Yep. I would get that. Yep.
So that was my set. I went for each of these. I went for. Oh wait, no, I take it back. There was one more. Kid Rock, "All Summer Long." And again, you could argue that's a danceable one because it samples Sweet Home Alabama. But I really think at this point, because it's been so far removed, you could easily throw that into a cocktail and people would just kind of, again, have some fun with it. Especially if you have one where they're doing guard games or they're doing some other things during cocktail hour. This would be a good one just to kind of have some fun with. Yeah.
Excellent. So that's some of our country suggestions.
And by the way, if you're in the chat rooms, feel free. If there's something, if there's one that fits with what you like and you want to throw it out there, by all means, go ahead and do so. Scott, I don't know if he was being serious or not when he said David Allan Coe, never even called me by my name. And then David threw in "Honky Tonk Badonka Donk." I think that one might be a little bit more on the dancey side than what I was originally thinking.
Yeah.
But you know what? You could have some fun with it. If you have the right crowd, both of those, I think, would be able to just kind of have some fun and do that. You could even throw in, if you're going old school still, the Hank Williams Jr. Family Tradition.
Yeah. So many different options of what a person could do.
All right. So
next one.
Let's go into kind of taking that direction. And the next one I would say is acoustic. And the reason why I would say maybe the next direction, or maybe even the most important out of the set that we got here, is because I feel that acoustic cocktail hours are really big for outdoor weddings. My weddings that have tents, I would say probably 95 out of 100, if I were to go back and check my stats, would say of the outdoors have said we want acoustic.
Right.
Especially my weddings, especially my wedding like ceremonies. If they're outdoor, we'd like acoustic stuff like to walk into. Like we kind of like that vibe, and we get into cocktail, and we want to keep that vibe going. That's the word I hear over and over and over again. So yeah, that's where I feel that would go. John, what are some of yours that you threw out for acoustic?
The acoustic is a little bit of a different area for myself. What I utilize for that is I have a couple of bands that I have. Was it Boise Avenue? I use quite a bit of their material, or I will just do something as literally go through and find an acoustic playlist of oddities, but they're covers. Because you can go to Spotify and you can find covers of all of the important songs. Now I'm going to go look and see, is there acoustic
There is, because that's where I get my list. Yeah. So first off, John Candy gave us a wonderful gem right there. If you are, and don't do this obviously the day before the wedding, do this like plenty in advance. But if you're looking for ideas and you're wanting to kind of change up the cocktail hours that you've always done, one of the best things that you can do is just go out there and search this type cocktail, this type dinner, or even just like this type of playlist, and look for those tracks that really jump out at you. So John, you mentioned that. I actually have a playlist through my Spotify that I set up that actually I call it's my acoustic playlist, and I think I typed in just the word acoustic one time.
Oh, and there's just so much out there.
And what I loved was, I was getting things like Boise Avenue. I was getting things like Anthem Lights. Those were two that really jumped out at me as far as like, I really like their style of covers. But I was also getting just acoustic versions of songs that I didn't even know acoustic versions existed.
Yes.
Like Alicia Keys' No One. I didn't know there was an acoustic set to that. Like, you know, when you look and sure enough, and it's her official thing. So yeah, sorry I interrupted. Go ahead.
No, that's keep going, because I've exhausted my area for this. I didn't. This is one area that I started looking at. It's like I like to, you know, one of the reasons why I like the Jack Johnson with his version of the Pina Colada song is because it's a cover of a song. He's put his own taste and twist to the song, but yet it's the cover, so everybody knows the lyrics, or if they know the song, they know the lyrics. Those are the kind of gems that I like to try to find those. If I can find them on Spotify, and then if I can go buy them somewhere, that's a good day. If I can find them only on Spotify, it's like, oh man.
Yeah.
That's a bummer, because
that's the one downside to a lot of the covers when I looked, or not covers, but a lot of just the acoustic versions. When I looked for them, let's say on Amazon and stuff, I struck out a lot of them.
Yeah.
But it's still fun. It's still fun to kind of listen to and see. Obviously, the exception would be the Anthem Lights and Boise Avenue. I did have a lot of success finding their tracks. Don't fall into the victim that sometimes you can, which is like acoustic. Oh, I'm going to play all John Mayer and all Jason Mraz, and that's it. It's very easy to fall into that trap, and a lot of times that's what I end up. I shouldn't say what I end up doing now, but what I did. Somebody asked for acoustic. Oh, John Mayer. Okay,
here we go. Yeah.
Do that. I think
that's like the Kenny G CD. I'll throw that in, and there's dinner.
Yeah. It's that same type of mentality. Do yourself a favor, just search acoustic, and we're not trying to take the cheat way out of this, but there are so many covers that you'll just be surprised and maybe find some new artists you just absolutely love.
And I think it's important to do that research and to customize your personal list of acoustic songs that you're going to be using during that cocktail time, because they've got to be songs that kind of speak to you a little bit, because people will see if you're hearing songs that you're kind of like and they're some of your favorites and you're kind of bebopping a little bit as you're doing your things, people will see that you're enjoying the music as they would be enjoying the music, as opposed to it's just music in the background type of thing where it's like, you know, I don't even know what this song is. But when you can show some life and connection with that, it makes it so the guests are going to show some life and connection with it above and beyond. So it's ideally, that's one of the reasons why my main dinner time right now is coming out. I come out with 70s and 80s stuff, because that's stuff that I know like the back of my hand. And when somebody comes up there and is like, hey, what's the song? I can go, boom, I can give them the song and the artist and tell a little story about the song, because I curated that list of songs that are being played. Excellent.
Cool.
So, where are we at?
So, where should we go next? I've led the first two. Where do you want to go next?
I'm good. I've got notes and such here to go any direction you want to go next.
All right, so
I'll accept that direction. I didn't do that one.
Of course.
I looked under. You know.
You looked at my paper, didn't you?
It's like I was there and it's like Huey Lewis in the News, and then I got distracted. And the next thing you know, there's 47,000 versions of I Want a New Drug, and I had to listen to all of them today. I did. It was fun.
And Scott says your guests will say they haven't heard that song in a long time.
And think about how much fun, Scott, this would be is if they would not only say, I haven't heard that song in a long time, and they're like, I never knew that there were that many versions of I Want a New Drug from Huey Listen to News. Seriously. They'll be like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest DJ ever. I didn't know that there was the possibilities.
Well, Scott has had a request that we go Motown next, so let's go ahead. Let's go into that, and then David has a great question that I want to answer after we finish with Motown. So David will come back to that. But with Motown, I feel like you can do a lot of different places with Motown.
Yes.
We talk about certain ones kind of fitting in certain areas. I feel like Motown is just one of those that it's not so much maybe the location, but the atmosphere and the clientele that you're getting, the guests, it's not just your couple, but the guests that you have. If you see a lot of, I would say 30 somethings mixed in with then the parents' generation of the couple, Motown is perfect. Motown is one of those that is a good cross generational, where as long as you're not heavy in one area of your guests, I feel like it's going to fit. But I also feel like, you are looking at you could have some fun with this in some of those upscale venues, but also some of those backyard parties and some of those tent parties. So with that being said, I'm going to rattle through my 5 that I've got.
Yeah.
And John, if this should be like Boggle, we should just, scratch them off and kept score. No. Okay. So Temptations, the way you do the thing you do. I think it was great. Aretha Frank.
I'd one up that with My Girl. I personally like My Girl better, but whatever.
My Girl's Dinner.
Oh, you're gonna and you might need that one for the spotlight dance. Okay, I get you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aretha Franklin, Respect. Now this is a different one because a lot of people will hang on to this one, use it for some call and response type of stuff during dancing, open dancing, and that kind of thing. So I could understand holding it if you really want to, but I also feel like this is where you can kind of set some of the tone that, listen, we're gonna have some upbeat times, we're gonna have some fast times, and I'm not holding back. We're gonna have a party tonight. So if you want to dance during cocktail, let's go. Sam and Dave, Soul Man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Who doesn't love Blues Brothers? Really?
Yeah.
Jackson 5. This is going to be another one that's going to become, you're going to be like, wait a minute, that's not the dance list. ABC. Another one. Again, just kind of different, throwing something out there to see. And then 4 Tops. Can't help myself.
Okay.
So those are my, and again, my list goes on because I love Motown. Motown is one of my favorites. I didn't really used to like it, and then I found like a greatest hit CD of the Motown. I started listening. I'm like, ooh, I like that. Ooh, I like that one. Ooh. And so it's grown for me as to be one that I really kind of enjoy this category.
So I went through and kind of was more looking at some artists because there's many of them that the artists can fit many categories. Their songs can be dance or that, and it depends on what you're trying to achieve. As an example, Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder has a variety of different tracks that could work really well in that time frame, but with the right audience, some of them could move into the dance, whether it's Superstition, Signed, Sealed, and Delivered, Sir Duke. Those are all songs that are very high in Stevie Wonder's catalog, could go a lot of places. Marvin Gaye, there's just a whole load of different things you could do for Marvin Gaye that would fit into that. I Heard It Through the Grapevine, obviously, is one that has been around and people know if you're looking for that. Sam Cooke, if you want to go a little bit older, Otis Redding would start to fit into this category. There was one other that the one that I've never used much, but people talk about is things from Barry White that would fit into this era. Can't Get Enough of Your Love, Babe is his main track, but when you Brian Red and I were talking about this, and he was going through, and there's a more way kind of deeper cuts from Barry White that would be great in that area. So another situation that you go through and you listen, and go to Spotify, you can type it in, and find some artists and such and tracks that you listen to, like, hey, I've never heard that. And you also find out that, say, you want Motown, and you're going to find tracks are not from that category. An interesting thing is you see people put a playlist together of, let's say, hot pop songs, and they'll have like the hot pop songs, and then they have their songs that they've thrown into the list to try to get plays. So when you see something really weird on on the list once in a while, it's because of things like that. So
I love a Motown playlist I found one time that had the Rat Pack thrown in. Like,
and that doesn't work quite. No. But since you mentioned Rat Pack, let's talk about it.
Yeah. So, first off, let's set the scene for this. By the way, great suggestions also that you guys are throwing into the chat room.
Oh, I haven't even I didn't even follow that
with
one.
Motown. It's just some other feels to put in there. But with the Rat Pack, I feel that this is going to be on more of your higher end. You've got your outdoor patio cocktail party that's going to go into the nicer venue, or you're in the nicer venue doing your cocktail. I feel like this for a good Rat Pack, you want something in the upper end of your venues.
The barn where they put wax on the floor.
Right.
And
as opposed to the one where you
over,
can see the ground and the cow crap below.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a step up in that when the floor is waxed, and the straw bales are over on the right side instead of the left.
To the left, left, everything in the box.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry, different song. So anyway, so with Rat Pack,
so let's talk a little bit about what the Rat Pack is, because we talk about it, we've heard it. If you've been to Vegas, you hear them describe it. The Rat Pack basically was commonly known as the Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr. were the three main. Now, there were other people who kind of would be in part of their shows and such when they were doing in Vegas, but these were the three that were kind of mainly identified with the Rat Pack. Most Rat Pack playlists or albums or reunion tours feature the three of them doing their things. So a couple of other artists that were kind of sometimes in that category, Peter Lawford and Joy Bishop were two more. And there's some female artists that would occasionally jump in and do a track. But for most of it, it was really those three were the Rat Pack. And when you go and start looking, those three are the songs that songs from Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and Frank Sinatra are pretty much the main bulk of the Rat Pack you find.
What I've also found with this playlist a lot of times, and I didn't in the list that I put together tonight, but I've often found that when somebody says a Rat Pack, sometimes you can get along with the crooners, and which broadens it a little bit for you. So you're not just basically playing three artists songs for an hour. You can get a little bit more out of it.
So when you make the jump to crooners, now you've gone to things like Bobby Darin was in that category. You just set me up wonderfully, Dan. This was actually my notes, so thank you for that.
I know. I saw it.
You can come newer. Harry Connick Jr. is in that. Louis Armstrong, Andy Williams, Bing Crosby was in that one. Fred Astaire was in that one. There's a lot of artists that made that category of crooners, which then can fit into the Rat Pack and kind of create this whole Perry Como was another big name. So it definitely opens up that playlist a lot if you're going to make it a Rat Pack /crooner playlist.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I found though a lot of people know like Rat Pack more than they know crooner. Mm-hmm. Like it's not in the songs, but the term,
the terminology of it. I get that.
Yeah, at least that's been from my experience. So. Go ahead. You can take your list first.
So because I was going to focus on the crooner side of it. Andy Williams, Can't Take My Eyes Off You is a one I like. Wink and a Smile from Harry Connick Jr. is another one that I'm really into. Dancing Cheek to Cheek from Fred Astaire was another one that I really, really liked. As Time Goes By, because it's not this artist that I had on the list, because I thought about it afterward, Jimmy Durante. Jimmy Durante did a version of As Time Goes By. Dean Martin had That's Amore. And that one was another popular pick. And then Perry Como and can't think of it. It's like a prom song. And then The Way You Look Tonight from Frank Sinatra. Perry Como, what was that one? It came to my head just a few minutes ago, and then I forgot it. But it's such a good song.
You're gonna say it and be like, "Oh yeah, that's the one I was thinking of."
Yeah, exactly. Well, just I'll find it. I'll find it here in just a second.
All right. Well, while you're looking, let me go. I'll go ahead and tackle. And of course, I had Frank on there as well. The way you look tonight. That's just one of those classics. I mean, it's slow, obviously, but there is enough of a feel to it and enough of an upbeat that you're going to hit hard with it, or you can use it during cocktail, I should say. What I would also say, you could experiment a little bit. If you've got a good couple for this, you could experiment on 2 other versions of that. And there's a bunch of artists who have done that. There was even back in the time that a lot of these songs were done, you'd have multiple artists who do the same song. And it wasn't quite like, it was almost like one writer wrote it and gave it to like 5 people and they all recorded it, and it, like, some of them came off and some of them didn't. But Maroon 5 has a beautiful cover of that. I've had a couple of different people request that. As far as I know, it's not on an album. You can buy it off of iTunes. That's how I went around to be able to actually find it and get it. And then Michael Bublé. If you're looking for something to kind of take it a little bit more of a modern tilt to it, but still be able to have some fun with it, he has a version of that as well. Speaking of Michael Bublé, I love throwing him into this Rat Pack, idea, Rat Pack crooner type of idea.
Yeah.
Just one, it keeps you from playing the same artist. But what's funny is a lot of times he sounds so much like Frank Sinatra. I mean, like almost to the point you're like, wait a minute, who's that playing? I got to look again. That you do have to be a little bit careful if you put him back to back with a Frank, at least from my brain and the way it works with programming. But you can have some fun with it and be able to work him in and give some of like a modern feel and even better audio quality in a lot of cases too. But Michael Bublé, Save the Last Dance. With Dean, I didn't go for That's Amore. I went for Mambo Italiano.
Okay.
A little bit more of a feel. Back to Frank, Love and Marriage. This is one of those, especially if you get the right generation, they're like, Married with Children. Like, there for a while, it was like tacky to play it at weddings because of that show. And now it's like, it kind of brings back that, okay, I could go for that. And then I have one that I don't know how popular it is but it came across Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin, Sam's Song. Just kind of a little fun back and forth song between the two of them. Just a little fun to kind of have in the background for cocktail hour. David threw in the Candyman from Sammy Davis.
Yep.
I think that's a great one as well. And then some more classics like Nat King Cole, Unforgettable. Now you're definitely going into just more of that older vibe necessarily rather than the Rat Pack crooner, but still great songs.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so we've done acoustic, we've done country, we've done Motown, we've done Rat Pack.
Contemporary and modern.
And modern.
That left.
So before we get into that list, one area in which I think that would be a spot people kind of need to be thinking about, and maybe I've got my 70s dinner, I've got my 80s dinner, and I think the next area that a person needs to really put something together is going to be that 90s cocktail type music, or that, not dinner, but cocktail music. Because I think we've got now, as a person, the ages of people progress, I think that in the next few years is going to start to, like people like to listen to the pop, bubblegum 80s music. I think we're going to have to find that type of music out of the 90s to be playing for those people who, because you look at it, the 90s, that's 25 to 30 years ago, when some of these kids would have been, our wedding couples today were born, which means that their folks were probably still being hip and going out and doing things when they were conceived or when they were born. So those songs are probably songs that were being played in the household when those little ones were growing up from the 90s era. So having a list from the 90s, I think, is something to think about and put together as we go forward in the next few years.
Definitely. I mean, I think it would be important to even have it set go now. I found a big shift recently. where for the longest time, my weddings, it was like, oh, 80s is the go-to. 80s is the go-to. And then I would say probably it was like 5 years ago, 90s. And then within the past year or two, it's jumped to early 2000s. So it was almost like 80s forever. And then it was like 90s. And now it's like we're immediately jumping. So I think it would be a good idea to have that playlist of those hits to throw in and get that ready to go in your sets.
Excellent. Okay, so more modern songs. I didn't take anything in the last 10 years pretty much. I went back about 15 years on this one. I wanted to get something that was after 2000.
Now that's throwback. We could have done a whole different.
and the reason I really wanted to go that route is yes, you can play some of the newer stuff as a cocktail music, but I don't know if I would do that short of maybe a prom, just from the standpoint of if I'm doing a wedding. Yeah, the under 20 and maybe the under 30 crowd would know most of the songs, especially if they hit the adult contemporary charts heavily. But if I go back 5 years, I mean, you've already mentioned a couple of the big artists that are on those adult contemporary charts, and that's really what we're trying to accomplish here is creating that chart or that playlist, especially as we get into newer music. So I just went back a little bit older, hitting a few artists from that era. Okay.
Go for it.
So a couple of the artists, and really some of these have been around, like Train. Train had, goes back in the early 2000s and continuing on. Train is probably, you can pick any number of songs from Train to play. Earlier, when Lifehouse came out, Hanging by the Moment was a fun song, but the song that I would prefer to use is You and Me. I kind of went that, and I went rock because I didn't want to go into too much of the brooding type stuff. But there's Matchbox 20 came out, but they were in that kind of the more of that brooding and kind of down stuff. I wasn't too excited about that, as well as Three Doors Down. This is where Jason Mraz comes in with his I'm Yours is the one that goes over really quite well. But that whole era of the Matchbox 20 and Maroon 5 was getting into the things. Any of those can be put into that playlist to create that atmosphere, especially if you're coming from that 10 to 15 years ago. And some of these artists will be known very well from the 40-year-olds or 50-year-olds on down because they're hitting the airwaves of those adult contemporary stations on a regular basis. So that's nice. What I was kind of thinking is going that direction.
So I'm gonna talk about my five or six I think that I have here, and then I've got a couple others that I've recently started to throw in. I agree. I don't think you want to do anything super new. You're not trying to break anything here, unless you just kind of hit across some great songs that you're looking for something to use, and you don't necessarily want to use it for dancing because it might be too new. But if you have it in the background, it's okay.
Sure.
Kind of idea. What comes to mind with that would be like Safety Suit. What was the name of that song now? That's not on my list. But we talked about in the show, I think it's the wedding song or it's the wedding version of the song. But anyway, look for them, and you Safety Suit Wedding, you'll get the song that I'm talking about. But that's one of those that the general public probably doesn't know. But it's definitely a slow song. It's definitely not something in your
Never Stop
or upbeat. What was that?
Never Stop.
There you go. That was the one. Thank you. So within that, those are some ideas. Colby Calais. I love using her. I love using her for some like an acoustic type of feel, but she fits, I feel like, more into this contemporary modern, especially the song I Do. Was never super popular. Like it got good play, it got good adult contemporary play, but it's not something that was hitting like top 40 mainstream and breaking the charts.
Right. Yeah.
So good song there. Sarah Bareilles, I Choose You. Looking for that fun part there. I also went with Maroon 5. I specifically went with This Love.
Okay.
You're talking about that.
Yeah.
Now going to some of those newer ones. Portugal the Man, Feel It Still. Marshmello and Bastille, Happier. George Ezra, Shotgun. And Ed Sheeran, Justin Timberlake, I Don't Care. I think it's I Don't Care.
Yeah, those.
Yeah. Again, and those last two were ones I kind of forgot about that were on my list until as we were talking. I remembered that I had them on there, or in my actual playlist ones. Again, nothing was like wow, that was a banger type of thing that I just played, but had some upbeat, keeps things going, gives kind of a little bit more life to it, especially if you've been doing some of the older tracks, kind of throw in something new. It's like it also kind of sets that tone. If you're going for a modern playlist, you play something that's relatively new, you've kind of established to some of them that may want some quote unquote new music, that you got it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start opening the dance floor and you've got classics, they know stuff is still to come that you can play that's new.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes setting that table and creating the anticipation.
Yeah.
Hugely valuable.
So David asked a question earlier, and I think it's important that we kind of just broach this a little bit with some of the time that we have left. He described basically the difference between cocktail and dinner, because I think in some of the stuff that we talked about tonight, especially some of the songs that we picked up, there's definitely crossover possibilities, but maybe where do you see one versus the other?
I try to, what I do is I want the cocktail to be at a fairly consistent. We may go up a little bit, we may go down, but it's going to be not danceable speed, or maybe you'll get one that'll be maybe danceable speed. But I want that cocktail to be kind of lively. I want it to be a toe tapping time. Then when the dinner starts and we've just finished all the formalities and we've had that beautiful moment, I want to have it more of a romantic time frame coming out of that dinner while the guests are going and we're getting that first half of the audience served, which is generally about a half an hour. And then it's time to start bringing it back up again slowly. So then by the time we're back at 1 hour after the dinner started, we're back up to more of that toe tapping feel, because then we're going to be getting everyone together to do the toast. And then I want to come out of that toast in that whole time frame with something that's more of that fun, upbeat song that people are going to be like, yeah, all right, now we're going to get ready for the dance. And then kind of continue to build that anticipation for the dance floor at that point in time.
So you would say it's probably more programming than it is songs.
Yeah, I mean, okay. It's programming songs, so it's kind of going together. It's like saying,
fair enough.
It's like food, and it's like it's eating and food. They go together.
Well, okay, fair enough. Okay. I would agree with that. Now for me with cocktail, I'm okay if I throw in a couple dancey ones, not consistently, but again, that lively, and if it crosses the line a bunch of times throughout, ebb and flow over that line, I'm fine with that, because I've rarely had a wedding where it suddenly just breaks out into dancing during cocktail.
Oh, every wedding, every time I do, because I play Huey Lewis and then they go crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
But when that happens
all the time,
it is the coolest feeling in the world, because you're not necessarily expecting it, but it's hitting and you're like, oh, all right. And then I'm with you now. Our formalities actually often come time after dinner. But I still kind of, we're coming out of blessings and toasts and stuff like that. So we're kind of taking here, and then we're going and we're ramping up as we go along. So again, getting that toe tapping, getting to, I will even, a lot of times I have one that's just like kind of a hodgepodge of songs. I'll end with a couple like Stevie Wonder, Sir Duke, the ones that, like you were talking about, where it's like, oh, they could go either way. I want them to go either way. Yeah. They're not going to get up and dance usually during dinner, just because the expectation's different. Food's in front of them, I'm going to eat. But it definitely has that more of that feel. It's a little bit safer, I think, to get there, and you get that toe tapping during dinner. But yeah, have some fun with that. I love David's comment.
David made a I don't know what he's talking about.
I want a new DJ.
See, there's all sorts of versions of it.
Something should just not be redone. You can't top the original, right, John?
It's a beautiful version. He wants a new drug. But David made a great point a little bit higher up that volume is so huge and so critical during that dinner and cocktail time. The cocktail could be a little bit higher because people are up and mingling and moving around a little bit. But even though they are moving around, having a volume set so people can talk. They're here to talk. And we're talking 2021 or whenever this world goes back to similar, our past events. People are there to socialize. They're there to congregate. They are there to talk. It's a family reunion. It's a time to catch up. That's where I've gone to having the multiple speakers around the room. And then once we start the dance, we shut the wireless ones off, and now we are just with the mains. But that sound around the room at a lower volume so people can talk anywhere in the room. But yet if they're quiet for a moment, oh yeah, there's a song in the background type of thing, instead of having the dead air cricket type thing in the background. So I think volume is it's hugely important, and we don't pay enough of attention to that sometimes because we just are like, oh, I want to be able to hear it in the back of the room at the volume, and that's not a cool thing.
Yeah, and I think you hit on it exactly, where the more speakers you can spread out, and Ben, this would be a great, and you and Ben probably have talked about this like 12 times already, but just this idea of placing it out so that you don't have to overpower any one particular spot, using the sound acoustics to your advantage. You create that great feel.
That you do. And then it gets to be a situation where you can have an atmosphere at a different level than you would typically. So
awesome. Well, John, I hope they came away with a few things in their list.
Or if you need,
when I'm alone with you.
Just say no.
Come on now.
Just say
no. It's like one show, we should just play all the different versions of I Want a New Drug. That would be our best show ever.
You know what's funny is somehow you would do that and it would get like 1,000 ratings, and you would just like pump your ego up even more. You know that, right?
It would. And I'd play it on with my Megaseg software, and it would be awesome.
Oh, jeepers.
Okay, I think then we're...
So, John, let's talk about this week. What do we got coming up?
So, let's see. Tomorrow night, one of the people have been talking about the HDMI running. Last week, we talked about doing the outdoor theaters and what you need for projectors. Ben dug into that. But people were like, okay, so how do you run that HDMI signal and do it right? Well, we're going to look at HD base T connections, which basically is taking a high definition image, 1080p or 4K, sending it over an Ethernet wire, and how to do that and what components you need and how expensive it is, how far you can go. And we're going to actually go, and Ben's going to walk us through doing that tomorrow night in the show. Then Brian and Jay, we're going to come back and talk about backup audio. Basically, when there's a blackout, what are you going to do? What are you using for a music source? And Brian and I've talked about this before, but getting Jay's thoughts on it, and now that Brian's been working with some different tools and things, we're going to revisit that and see, what do you use when the power goes out, which unfortunately we've been having up here with the storms coming through like twice a week. We've lost power on a number of occasions, one of which was Saturday night, and we would have had a period of time without entertainment. So that's tomorrow night. And then MJ's back on Wednesday night doing a music and mixing show. He's been out and about here taking some time off, and he'll be back and ready to go for Wednesday night.
Good deal. Awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join us tonight. Of course, remember the chill room is still available, and you want to check that out, djntv.com/chill. You can go there, hang out with a bunch of DJs, talk about whatever you want to talk about, the good stuff, the bad stuff, whatever happens to be fun. And there's usually at least 10 to 12 guys in there and ladies that are having a good time. So you can go join them for that. It's been a pleasure being with you tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself. I know I did. And I got a list like a mile long now, thanks to John. And none of it is, I Want a New Drug. Have yourself a good night. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.